There's a number that matters years before the dead pool, and almost nobody outside the water and power business is talking about it. When Lake Mead drops below 1,035 feet above sea level, Hoover Dam loses about 70% of its ability to generate electricity. Not because the water stops flowing. It keeps flowing, that's not the problem. But because below that line, 12 of the dam's 17 turbines were never built to run. As of June 2026, Lake Mead sits at roughly 1,052 feet. That is about 15 feet above the line, and the federal government's own projections say the lake will cross it within the next 12 months. Maybe by late August, or maybe not until next spring. Regardless, definitely within the year. Here's what makes this different from every Lake Mead story you've probably seen. The famous threshold, the one that gets the dramatic graphics, is 895 feet, the dead pool, where water can no longer pass through the dam at all. That number is still well over 100 feet below where the lake is today. It is years away, possibly more. The power threshold is not years away, it is months away, and it will reshape electricity bills across the Southwest long before a single drop stops flowing through Hoover Dam. This is the story of 1,035 feet, the line that hits first. What happens when the lake crosses it, who pays for it, and the one piece of this story that is genuinely going right. To understand why power fails before water does, and you have to understand how a dam makes electricity in the first place. And it is not, as most people assume, about how much water there is. It's about how high it sits. Hoover Dam doesn't burn anything, it has no fuel. What it has is height, the vertical distance between the surface of Lake Mead and the turbines far below at the base of the dam. Engineers call that distance the head. Water from the reservoir falls through that head, gaining speed and pressure, and slams into the blades of the turbines, spinning them to generate power. The taller the column of water above the turbines, the harder it pushes and the more electricity each turbine can produce. That single fact is the whole story. As Lake Mead falls, the head shrinks. The water has less height to fall through, so it pushes with less force, and every turbine produces less power than it did the year before. Hoover Dam's generating capacity has been quietly declining for 2 decades, not because the water disappeared, but because the surface that drives it keeps dropping closer to the machinery. Now add the second problem. Hoover's 17 main turbines were designed for a reservoir that stayed high. 12 of them simply cannot operate effectively in the low water conditions that exist below 1,035 feet. The head is too small, the flow too weak to spin them as intended. Only 5 units, a newer, wide head design, built to work with less water, can keep going. So 1,035 feet is not a gentle slope. It's closer to a step. Above it, most of the dam works. Below it, 2/3 of the dam's generating capacity falls away, and the whole structure leans on just 5 turbines doing the work of 17. That is the cliff, and the lake is 15 feet from the edge. To feel why that matters, you have to know what Hoover Dam's electricity actually does. Because this isn't one city's power supply, it's a piece of the foundation under the entire Southwest grid. When Hoover Dam came online in the 1930s, its power was the reason the project penciled out at all. The electricity sales paid the dam off. Nearly a century later, that power flows through the Western Area Power Administration, a federal agency that sells it at cost to more than 30 entities across 3 states. The list is a map of the modern Southwest. In California, Los Angeles, Glendale, Burbank, Pasadena. In Nevada, the Colorado River Commission, which spreads Hoover power across the Las Vegas metro. In Arizona, the Arizona Power Authority, the Salt River Project that helps power Phoenix, and the Central Arizona Project, the enormous canal system that itself pumps Colorado River water uphill across the desert. And below those big names, dozens of small towns, irrigation districts, and rural electric cooperatives that get a slice of the cheapest electricity in the region. That phrase is the key to the whole story. Federal hydropower from Hoover is among the cheapest electricity available anywhere in the West, because the dam is paid off and the river is free. When that supply shrinks, nobody's lights go out. The grid is bigger than one dam. What happens instead is that every utility losing its Hoover allocation has to go buy replacement power somewhere else. On the open market, from natural gas plants, from solar and battery providers. And all of it costs more. So the honest headline isn't Hoover Dam goes dark. It's the cheapest power in the Southwest gets more expensive, right at the moment the region can least afford it. So where does the lake actually stand right now, and where is it headed? In May 2026, the Bureau of Reclamation released its routine 24-month study. The federal projection of reservoir levels. The numbers were worse than the last ones. The study projects Lake Mead could fall to about 1,021 feet by the summer of 2027. That would break the reservoir's all-time record low, set in 2022, by more than 20 feet. To get there, the lake first has to pass through 1,035, the power threshold. And the same projections put that crossing inside the next 12 months. The Bureau's own language is striking for a federal agency. Maybe late August, maybe not until next spring. But the lake is going below the line that cost Hoover most of its capacity. And the cause this year isn't only the drought, it's a decision. Upstream of Lake Mead sits Lake Powell, behind Glen Canyon Dam, and Powell is in trouble of its own. To keep Powell from falling so low that it loses the ability to generate power and eventually to release water at all, federal managers are preparing to hold more water back in Powell, which means sending less of it downstream to Mead. The trade-off is deliberate: starve the lower reservoir to protect the upper one. And that choice alone could cut Hoover Dam's electricity output by as much as 40% before the end of 2026. Underneath all of it is the slow fact this channel has covered before. The Colorado River is in the grip of the driest stretch the Southwest has seen in at least 1,200 years. And the river system is now running at barely a third of its total capacity. The reservoirs aren't low because of one bad year. They're low because the river has been delivering less than the rules promised for a quarter century. And the rules were written for a wetter world. Now, the part of this story that is genuinely going right, because there is one. And the channel's whole job is to tell you about it as clearly as it tells you the rest. On May 21, 2026, the Bureau of Reclamation announced it will spend $52 million on 3 new wide-head turbines for Hoover Dam. Machines specifically engineered to keep generating power at very low water, all the way down to an elevation of 950 feet. That is far below today's level and far below the 1,035-foot cliff. Once those 3 new units are installed and join the 5 wide-head turbines already in service, the math at the cliff changes. Instead of losing 70% of generating capacity when Lake Mead drops below 1,035 feet, the dam would lose about 58%. Still a major cut, but meaningfully less of one. And crucially, it extends how far down the lake can fall while Hoover keeps making at least some power. This is what competent, unglamorous adaptation looks like. No one is pretending the turbines solve the problem. They are a hedge. Engineering that squeezes more electricity out of less water, bought deliberately because the people who run the dam can read the same projections everyone else can, and chose to act before the lake reached the line rather than after. But here is the honest version of what those turbines actually buy. And it's the same hard truth that ran through the dead pool story and the missing water story before it. The new turbines do not create water. They do not raise the lake. They do not bring back the head that drives the power. What they do is let the dam convert a shrinking resource a little more efficiently, generate more electricity per foot of remaining water than the old machines could. That is real, and it's worth $52 million. But it is adaptation to decline, not a reversal of it. If Lake Mead keeps falling toward 1,021 feet next year and lower after that, then better turbines simply mean the region gives up its cheap power a little more slowly. The bills still rise. The cheapest electricity in the West still becomes more expensive. The engineering buys time and efficiency. It does not buy water, and it does not buy back the era when Hoover Dam was a bottomless, almost free source of southwestern power. That era is ending regardless of how good the turbines get. So who actually feels this? Not everyone equally. And that's the part the dramatic graphics always miss. For a large utility like Los Angeles, losing a Hoover allocation is a line item. The city buys enormous amounts of power from many sources. Replacing a slice of cheap federal hydropower with pricier market power raises costs, but the system absorbs it. customers may never notice. The pain lands on the small providers. Jordi Fuentes, who runs the Arizona Power Authority, the agency that markets Arizona's share of Hoover's electricity, put the math about as bluntly as a public official will. For some customers, he estimates the rate could roughly triple. The reason is almost mechanical. When the dam generates less, its fixed cost gets spread across fewer units of power. So the price of every remaining unit has to climb to cover them. Picture who's on the receiving end of that. Lincoln County Power District in eastern Nevada was one of the original utilities wired to Hoover Dam back in the 1930s. Today, it serves about 5,000 people scattered across more than 10,000 square miles of high desert, a territory bigger than the state of Maryland, with the population of a single small town. A utility like that leans hard on its cheap federal allocation, and it has no big city portfolio to bury a price spike inside. When the wholesale rate jumps, there's nowhere for the cost to go, but onto the bills of the ranchers and rural households at the far end of a very long line. And there's a cruel loop hidden in the list. One of Hoover's biggest power customers is the Central Arizona Project, the canal system that lifts Colorado River water hundreds of feet uphill to reach Phoenix and Tucson. Moving water through the desert takes enormous electricity, so the same drought that cuts Hoover's power also makes it more expensive to move the very water the drought is rationing. The system has to pay more to deliver less. That's the shape of this kind of decline. It doesn't arrive as a single dramatic failure. It arrives as 1,000 bills getting bigger, weighted onto the people with the least room to pay them. So where does this leave the Southwest, honestly? The optimistic path is real and worth naming. The lake's decline can be slowed. Las Vegas has already cut its per-person water use by 58% over 2 decades, while adding nearly 1 million people. Proof that aggressive conservation works. The new turbines extend Hoover's useful range. A run of wet winters could buy years. And the grid is diversifying fast. Every solar farm and battery installation built across the desert is one more way to replace cheap hydropower without burning more gas. None of these stops the river's structural deficit, but together they can carry the region through a long, managed descent rather than a crisis. The sober path is the one the projections currently favor. The drought holds. Lake Mead crosses 1,035 feet this year and keeps falling toward 1,021 and beyond. Hoover's cheap power shrinks, rural rates climb, and the cost of moving water through the desert rises just as the water itself grows scarcer. The dead pool at 895 feet still waits in the distance. But the power cliff at 1,035 arrives first, quietly as a bill rather than a blackout. The dam will keep standing, the water will keep flowing for years yet. What's actually crossing the threshold this year isn't the survival of the Southwest. It's the end of the cheapest era of its power, and the beginning of a more expensive, more carefully managed one. So here's what I want to know from you. We're used to thinking about Lake Mead in terms of catastrophe, the day the water stops. But the threshold actually arriving this year isn't that. It's quieter. The loss of the cheapest power in the West, landing hardest on the rural communities least able to absorb it. If you lived in a small Arizona or Nevada town, watching your electric co-op's costs climb because a reservoir 200 miles away dropped 15 feet, what would you want your state to do first? What do you think are real and actual meaningful ways to help? Drop your answer in the comments. If you're new here, please consider hitting subscribe. We cover the forces reshaping our world that don't make the evening news but probably should.